I love movies. Gosh, I love movies.
We come to this place for magic.
I watch a lot of movies.
You do?
Yeah, I watch about a movie a day.
Welcome to Cinephomaniacs, a podcast by and for movie lovers. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Peyton. And in this episode, we're talking about A24's newest horror movie, Backrooms.
But first, we're going to briefly discuss what else we've been looking forward to in a segment we call
Added to Watch List.
One I'm really looking forward to is the movie that just won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival called Fjord. This is from the Romanian filmmaker Cristian Mungiu, and it stars Renate Reinsve and Sebastian Stan. Renate is one we'll be talking about more later in this episode, but Sebastian Stan you know from his American films like The Avengers and Thunderbolts, but he was born in Romania and he didn't learn English until he was 12. This is, as far as I'm aware, his first Romanian film. And he's been earning some critical acclaim over the last few years. He was nominated for an Oscar for playing a young Donald Trump in The Apprentice, and he was also in the movie A Different Man with Renate Reinsve, where he won the Golden Globe. So I was really excited for this one even before it won the Palme d'Or, and now I'm even more excited for it. The plot synopsis says it's about a family that moves from Romania to the mother's hometown in Norway, and the parents are accused of child abuse for their parenting style. So it sounds like really uplifting subject matter. And the Palme d'Or has become kind of an Oscar predictor. The past four winners were nominated for Best Picture, Best International Feature, or both of them. So if I had to guess, we will still be talking about this next year.
I agree. With it doing so well at Cannes, I'm sure that's one that we'll be talking about more. One that was just announced that I'm really excited for is Damien Leone's Tortures of the Damned. No plot details or anything has really been released yet other than he'll be writing and directing it. But I am a huge fan of the Terrifier franchise. I actually have a cat named Art. So this one is high up on my watch list immediately. Based on Terrifier, I'll be sat for anything from him. So very excited.
Damien Leone's Tortured Poets Department, you say?
That is actually one of my favorite albums of hers, so I really love that. Hopefully that's a good sign.
I didn't know this existed until yesterday either. I just assumed his next movie would be Terrifier 4, so I'm very curious about this one.
I am too. I thought it was confirmed that Terrifier 4 was his next movie. We know that one is in the works as well. So it's very fun to have two things to look forward to from him, one completely separate from this Terrifier universe.
Well, I'm looking forward to one we both saw a trailer for just yesterday, Adam Wingard's new movie, Onslaught. Adam Wingard directed You're Next, The Guest, and Godzilla vs. Kong. And this stars Adria Arjona, Dan Stevens, and Drew Starkey. And Adria Arjona is one that I really became a fan of after Hitman.
Yeah, that's your girl.
She plays a mother trying to protect her and her child as a military base is overrun. The trailer reminded me a lot of The Guest, which was one of Adam Wingard and Dan Stevens' previous movies. And in that movie, it's sort of a slasher where Dan Stevens is a super soldier gone wild. This looks like, if not explicitly a sequel, something more in the vein of that than what we've seen from Adam Wingard recently, like the two Godzilla movies.
I've actually never seen any of his Godzilla movies, but I have seen You're Next and The Guest, and I really enjoy both of them. Dan Stevens also is someone that I like quite a lot. I think he elevates pretty much anything with his weird, wacky performances. And Drew Starkey looks really fun in this one too. I didn't recognize him immediately, but he's one I've enjoyed a lot since Queer, and I like him in the Hellraiser reboot as well. He and Odessa Zion are fun to watch together in that, so yes, I think this one will be really cool.
I'm a big fan of anything Dan Stevens is into. Hopefully he'll be doing some type of weird accent, weird physical comedy here. I thought you were going to say you hadn't seen The Guest. And if that were the case, that one would have to be added to watch list for sure.
No, I would never do Dan like that. He's an actor who I will go out of my way to watch movies for, so I think I've made my way through most of his body of work now. I love that man. This next section is something we call Remove from Watch List, where every week we try to chip away at a few of the movies on Andrew's Letterboxd watch list. Andrew, what's that at right now?
58,118.
So it's actually gone down a bit since our last episode.
I'm trying.
You saw something pretty fun at the Plaza Live in Orlando recently. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I got to see the original Psycho with a live performance from the Orlando Philharmonic Orchestra. It was really fun. I got to go with some of my friends, and it's a good movie to see in theaters. I hadn't seen it in a long time, but the live orchestra really added something special to it. Really makes you conscious of where the score is used and where it isn't. I definitely came away from it appreciating Psycho and the score more. And I'd really look forward to seeing another movie with a live score like this. And I know there was one we both saw recently that was more up your alley.
Yes, for those who don't know, I am one of those white women that listens to true crime. And we watched The Crash together recently. And this one is about Mackenzie Shirilla and the murder of Dominic Russo and Damien Flanagan, which occurred in the summer of 2022. Essentially, Mackenzie, who was 17 at the time, was driving the three of them home from a party when the car they were in crashed at 100 miles per hour into a wall. And as details of the case start to come out, it seems that this was an intentional collision, not an accident like was initially assumed. And the documentary has Mackenzie and her parents, who are on her side to an insane degree, pleading their case and giving her side of the story, as well as the side of some of her friends who also really have a lot of loyalty to her. And of course, we get to hear from Dominic and Davian's families as well. This was an interesting story. I think it definitely was your run-of-the-mill Netflix true crime documentary, and I don't think there's much of a mystery here. I think it's pretty much a black and white case, but we were both working from home at the time, so I think stuff like this is perfect to have on in the background. I know that Mackenzie has a lot of shooters online, so hopefully this will serve to spread the voices of the victims' families, but it was interesting, despite, I think, having a very obvious outcome.
And something else that we've been binging during work unfortunately came to an end last night, which was Hacks, something we both enjoyed.
Yes, we started watching that together a couple months ago and have binged our way through all of it.
Hacks is sort of The Devil Wears Prada meets a female-fronted The Odd Couple. It stars Jean Smart as Deborah and Hannah Einbinder as Ava. In the beginning, Deborah is a Vegas stand-up comedian. She's rich and famous, but her comedy has become pretty stale. She's basically been doing the same set every night for 30 years. Ava is a younger TV comedy writer who comes in as her joke writer, and right away they clash between their two different sensibilities, but they discover that they have a really great comedic chemistry together. So over time, the two women work together and they improve both as comedians and as people as they learn something from each other.
Yeah, this has been such a fun, endearing, hilarious show to get to watch with you. Very sad that it's coming to an end, but I know the creators have been open about being happy they've been able to wrap it up on their own terms and give the characters the ending they wanted and think they all deserve. So I'm happy for them in that regard, and I think this is one we'll probably binge again together.
I think what makes this show so bingeable is you really become attached to these characters and their relationships. So seeing where everyone ended up was very satisfying, very emotional, had us questioning whether they were going to pull a twist on us up until the very end. But I think we're very pleased with where it ended.
It's showtime, folks.
And now, for the reason you're all really here, let's talk about Backrooms.
I found something.
Okay. Did you find?
Found a place. It's massive in there. It just goes on and on and on. All these rooms. This place built, though. Actually, more like it remembers them. And the more times it remembers something, the less it does.
Backrooms is the latest horror movie from A24, and It's directed by Kane Parsons, a 20-year-old YouTuber. This is just the latest in several horror movies that come from YouTubers. We were very fond of Curry Barker's Obsession. There was also Markiplier's Iron Lung earlier this year.
Danny and Michael Philippou, who directed comedy sketches together and did Talk to Me and Bring Her Back.
And then there was Shelby Oaks, directed by Chris Stuckman. And while I would not say either of us were Stuckmanized by it, it was sweet to see him get a chance to make a real Hollywood movie.
Yeah, and that one got a lot of buzz for just how crowdfunded it was, which I think is so awesome. Chris Stuckman is one I grew up watching, and I think we both enjoy a lot, despite, like you said, not being the biggest fans of Shelby Oaks, but it's just amazing to see how many people came together to make sure that got created and was able to be seen in theaters.
And even though Kane Parsons is only 20, this was not a grassroots movie, because you have it being produced not just by A24, but Sean Levy is behind it, James Wan,
Osgood Perkins.
So there was a lot of faith in this doing well from the beginning, including having 2 Oscar-caliber actors sign on in the form of Chiwetel Ejiofor and Renate Reinsve.
One of the reasons for all of that faith was probably the fact that the concept of the Backrooms are a pretty popular creepypasta online. And for those that might not be aware, creepypastas are sort of internet horror stories that take on a life of their own as more and more people learn about them. Another pretty infamous example would be Slender Man. The concept of the Backrooms actually originated on 4chan when a user asked others to post disquieting images that just feel, quote, off. So someone posted an image of what looks like the back part of an office building with walls that are in areas that don't necessarily seem to make sense. And it's very yellow or kind of beige in color all throughout, bathed in fluorescent light, so much so that you can almost hear the humming that you know comes with lights like that. And it's just a very empty space. But just in the way that it looks off and with those fluorescent lights just blasting, there is something about it that just, the vibes are off.
The vibes are off for sure. There's something very 90s about it. Very office space, just the buzzing fluorescent lights. And like you said, the design doesn't really make sense. And the more you look at it, the less sense it makes. So it kind of triggers your uncanny valley instinct.
Yes, and the caption of this original image read, "If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum humbuzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you."
And so there you have the creation of the concept of the Backrooms, which, like many things, originated in a shitpost on 4chan.
And the original image actually was taken from a real-life office building located in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So theoretically, this is something that you can go visit.
And I think there is something really terrifying about this concept, because you look at this room and you can't quite tell where it ends and where it begins. So I think the idea of being trapped in there and just walking around from room to room is upsetting.
I agree, especially with the fluorescent lights and that constant humming. This would be a horrible place to be trapped. Your senses would just never get a break.
The A24 Backrooms movie is an adaptation of Kane Parsons' Backrooms shorts that he started in 2022.
Yes, these are a series of short films that you can find on YouTube. The movie actually ties into the universe that he's created on here, but I think even in these you can see his promise as a director. Both the movie and these short films are set in the 90s, and his short films especially definitely look like it based on the type of cameras that are used. And I think even from those you can see how talented this guy is.
And I find it so interesting how well this recreates the 90s aesthetic, from the set design to the cinematography, just the little details, like the way people dressed or the weird wallpaper you would see. And Kane Parsons was not alive for any of this. He was born after Shrek 2. But I think what makes him up to the task of creating this movie is he is someone who grew up with the concept of the Backrooms. He's familiar with this lore, helped create some of it. So I think you can see the passion that he has for this and the way he was inspired by it.
Absolutely. I think one of my favorite aspects of the internet, or at least rabbit holes to get lost in, are creepypastas. So I think him growing up part of the generation that created them really allowed him to tell this story in a way that older filmmakers might not have had as much insight into.
We have 2 Oscar caliber actors in the lead roles. Chiwetel Ejiofor plays Clark, a divorced furniture store owner. He's been in movies for about 20 years, and he's probably best known for 12 Years a Slave. And he's doing interesting work here. There are things he does just with like his posture or some of his physical decisions that I felt really sold his character's manic energy. Next to him, we have Renate Reinsve as the psychiatrist Mary Klein. Renate has really risen in the last few years after her breakout role in The Worst Person in the World. After she won Best Actress at the Cannes Film Festival for that film, she's kind of become the queen of the festival. She was in Armand a couple years ago, which won the Camera d'Or, which is the Best Directorial Debut prize. Last year she was in Sentimental Value, which won the number 2 prize, the Grand Prix, and they rode that movie all the way to the Oscars just a couple months ago. It was nominated for Best Picture, 4 acting nominations, including Best Actress for her, and it won the International Feature Film Prize. And now, just a couple months later, she's in Fjord, which just won the Palme d'Or.
Yes, if you haven't seen the photos of her holding the prize from any of those years that he just mentioned, we recommend looking them up. She's such a cool girl.
Rounding out the supporting cast, we've got Mark Duplass, who I'm really fond of, Finn Bennett, Lukita Maxwell, and Mr. Halsey himself, Avin Jogia.
Yes, we actually never see him, only hear his voice and see a photo of him later on, so that's kind of interesting.
You know who we do see for like half a second? Katharine Isabelle from Ginger Snaps and American Mary.
When do we see her?
It's in the house scene when Renate Reinsve is at like a dinner party and she's overwhelmed and goes upstairs to take a pill. We see Katharine Isabelle opposite her for like half a second.
That was Katharine Isabelle?
Kane Parsons, if you're listening to this, I need to understand why you cut out Katharine Isabelle. I think you should release the Katharine Isabelle cut.
I didn't know that was her. That's so cool. She actually is in the first movie Andrew and I watched together, Ginger Snaps.
Yes, we're big Katharine Isabelle fans. I just bought the 4K special edition of Ginger Snaps, so really wondering why she wasn't in this movie more. Kane Parsons, explain.
So a very basic plot overview of this movie is a strange doorway appears in the basement of a furniture showroom. Of course, this is the furniture store owned by our main character, Clark, and the strange doorway in question leads to the Backrooms.
Clark is in a bad spot when we first meet him. His store isn't doing well, his wife has left him, he's drinking too much, and he's sleeping in his store, which we learn in a pretty funny scene.
Which, if that is your lot in life, a furniture store isn't the worst store to own.
Since he is sleeping in the store, he notices that the power goes in and out all the time. And when he brings in an electrician to look at the breaker panel, he notices that it's set up strangely. There are a few extra breakers just randomly placed at odd angles that don't seem connected to anything.
He's also seeing a therapist, Dr. Mary, to work through the anger issues and other trauma that he has surrounding going through the divorce from his wife. And the first time we meet her is in a therapy session with Clark, where she asks him to role play with her the night that Clark's wife kicked them out of their shared home, which he makes it very clear that he is the one paying for. So we understand that this is a man that is feeling a lot of anger, pretty broken inside, and also isn't in the best place in life. His wife has kicked him out of his home. His furniture store really isn't doing well. We see that everything is 75% off or more, and we don't see a single customer inside, I think, throughout this whole movie. So clearly this is someone that is not in a good place.
And we also learn through this exercise that he studied architecture, which may or may not inform some of his decisions later.
So, like we said, Clark is sleeping in the store, and one night the lights start to flicker, and then the lights from the downstairs section just turn on, almost calling him down there. And while he's down there, he gets really frustrated that the lights are flickering again, even after he's just had someone come out to check. So he just shuts all of the switches off. And finally, he slams on those ones that are really weird at the bottom, not connected to anything, supposedly, and all of the lights in the store shut down. So as he's walking away, ready to head back to bed, he sees that in the middle of the wall, where there's not a corner, there shouldn't be any kind of doorway, nothing behind it, he sees light coming through a very thin crack and goes to investigate.
And as he goes to investigate this crack, he reaches for the wall and his hand just kind of phases through the wall. And so he keeps walking and he phases through the wall and sees the Backrooms. It's just a huge empty space, and the design doesn't really make sense, but he's just fascinated by this. So he starts walking around, exploring it. And as he explores it, he realizes it just keeps going and going and going.
Yes, he immediately goes so far. I'm not going to act like no horror movies would ever happen to me. In fact, I think many would. But this is a situation I would not find myself in. I cannot believe how far he keeps going back. As soon as I stepped through and saw that monotonous, horrible office-looking thing, I would be out of there. There is no way. He goes so far.
And the farther he goes, I started questioning if he was even going to make it out or he was just going to get lost.
Yes, because of course, none of this has any rhyme or reason. There are some markers to tell you where you are, but things are getting moved around. Everything looks the same. It's all the same color. I'm immediately terrified. So as Clark is making his way through these back rooms, he has come across a cardboard cutout that is playing some kind of recording. It's cycling through different languages. And as he walks away from it a little bit, he thinks he hears something. And so he starts calling out, and all of a sudden the recorder turns off and the cardboard cutout is completely smashed, but we don't see what does it. And this, of course, freaks Clark out, so he starts scrambling to get away, and somehow he is lucky enough to find a little door that takes him pretty much back to where he came in, so he's able to quickly run away and get back out into his store. And one part I actually did find really funny about this is after he's able to make his way back into our reality, he goes back into the back rooms to take a stool that he saw there. And I just thought it was funny that he risked his life to just go get a piece of furniture.
Well, he is a furniture salesman.
That isn't doing well, so I understand it. Maybe he can sell this unique stuff, make some money.
And I feel like this whole sequence sort of illustrates the value in getting such a young filmmaker, because it reminded me a lot of the language of video games, where he's just kind of wandering and wandering. It's not really motivated by plot, it's more motivated by, oh, I wonder what that next room has, and then he goes to it, and then he sees a tunnel, so he crawls through that. Even all the way back to finding, like, a save point, which is this little door that he goes through and takes him back to the beginning.
Yeah, I think the strength of this sequence very much lies in Kane Parsons' directing and the set design. They did actually build 30,000 square feet of backrooms for this movie, and the scale of that is very much felt, especially in this sequence where we spend several minutes with Clark just as he's exploring. And I do think, at least for me, it goes on maybe a bit too long until we meet the creature and there's a bit of a chase sequence back into our world. But for big fans of the Backrooms series and online lore, I'm sure this is incredibly exciting, and it's always exciting to see a practical set like this and how much work and thought went into it all. So overall, this is a very cool sequence.
Yes, the set design and costume design here are just incredibly impressive. And when we spoke before about how Kane Parsons is able to capture these 90s aesthetics, that probably includes a lot of research for him, but it also just means he has very skilled craftspeople who really know what they're doing and were able to create these sets, find these costume pieces. It all is just really impressive.
So after Clark makes this discovery, he has another session with Dr. Mary, and she actually thinks he might be intoxicated when he comes in because he's so amped up and ready to tell her about this. And of course, how would you explain this discovery to someone? It doesn't make a lot of sense. It sounds like maybe he is having some kind of mental break.
Well, we know how he explains it. He explains it as It's like you're describing a dog to someone who's never seen a dog, and then they try to draw it.
And I do think that is very apt for what the Backrooms is and all of these different rooms and creations that we see. But Mary not believing him does really anger Clark, who of course we know might have some anger issues already. So he tells her that he is going to come back with proof and she's going to owe him an apology.
Do you think Clark might have some issues with women?
I think Clark might have some issues with women.
So to prove Dr. Mary wrong, Clark enlists the help of two of his employees, Kat and Bobby, who are dating. He has Bobby check out a camcorder from his school and has them both meet him in the furniture store. And Kat and Bobby clearly don't believe Clark. They think maybe he's lost his mind or is just drunk. And we see that Clark has been doing a lot more exploring at night, has taken a lot of furniture out. He has created a map of what the Backrooms looks like and has gone about as far as he could go without having some help, which he's enlisted them to provide.
Yes, and this is also, at least at first, one of the funnier parts of the movie with them not believing Clark, but Bobby really wants to just see where this goes, and Kat is very much like, no, he's crazy, what are we doing? But something I liked about this was, I think, the immediate satisfaction of Clark saying that there's something crazy happening and it just being true. Of course, this isn't a ghost story or anything, but a lot of times we spend a lot of time with our main character trying to prove to the people around them that something insane is happening. And with this, Clark just says, yep, this wall is a doorway, we can phase through it, and they immediately can. No problems.
And we get a funny exchange here, because Kat asks Bobby if maybe Clark has drugged them. And Bobby says, I think I'd know if I was high.
And Kat says, you are high.
And he says, weed doesn't count. So Clark has Bobby document the Backrooms with the camcorder and takes them all the way to the deepest point he's gotten, which is this tunnel going down a steep slope. He ties a rope around a bed frame and around Bobby and asks Bobby to crawl down the tunnel with the camera.
Yes, and Kat, who has been voicing her discomfort the whole time, is pretty freaked out by now, really doesn't want Bobby to go down there, but Bobby has been kind of dismissive of all of her discomfort up to this point. He even says, oh, the hallway's not even that steep, when we can see pretty immediately that it goes almost straight down. But they lower him down there, and at first all he sees are piles and piles of clothing. And he says that it stinks down there, so that kind of hints to us, the audience, that maybe something more sinister has happened to produce all of this. But he's taking a look around and doesn't see anything until he reaches, both literally and figuratively, the end of his rope. And he asks them to let it out more, but they can't. So he kind of goes as far as he can until he hears something and immediately starts screaming for them to pull him up.
They pull him up as fast as he can, but just when he gets to the top of the slope, something on the other end pulls on his rope and drags him away, screaming. As Bobby is pulled down, it pulls the bed toward Clark and Kat and knocks them down the tunnel as well. And when they get to the bottom, they just see a trail of blood where Bobby should be and something crawling away into the walls.
This sends Clark and Kat running, and we get another extended exploration of the backroom scene, but this one, of course, is much tenser and faster paced than our initial intro of it with Clark. He's lost Kat at this point. They ran in opposite directions after Bobby was taken, and we get a lot of really interesting rooms at this part. One is Christmas themed, one looks like almost an underground kind of Olympic style pool area. It's not that size, but that's the vibe it's giving off. And this room is pretty cool because once Clark gets here, he can actually hear Kat yelling. And we understand that Kat can see him, but he's looking at what just looks like a wall, much like the others that occupy the Backrooms. But she says that she's looking at a pane of glass, and it looks like something that Clark should just be able to break and let her through. So he's trying to figure out how he can get to her when all of a sudden she starts screaming again and indicates that there's something behind Clark.
This whole sequence is pretty interesting because for a lot of it, it's taking on this found footage aesthetic. You could easily make this sequence a short film and put it in one of the VHS movies. and it would probably be really solid.
That's very much the vibe it gives. I agree. And it's at this point that we just cut away from Kat and Clark, so we don't figure out what happens to them for a bit, and we revisit Dr. Mary.
And it's here where Mary pretty much becomes our POV character. She gets a voicemail from Clark saying that he won't return. And so she gets worried and does a wellness check on his store and finds that the mail has piled up in front of it. It doesn't seem like there's been anyone in there. In an understated funny moment, she pushes the door and it's not locked.
Yes, and the store looks completely unchanged, implying that people aren't even coming into the store to steal furniture. No one wants anything from Clark's.
Mary follows the path Clark took and eventually finds her way toward this portal in the wall.
Yes, and Clark has taped it out to look like a door, and of course he had that session with Mary where he told her that he found the Backrooms and kind of how to get into it. So she has an understanding pretty much right away that this might actually be the place that he was talking about.
During Clark's first venture into the Backrooms, we got this pretty effective scare where he can't find the portal at first, and so you think maybe it's just closed up. So when he does find it, he puts up this blue tape around it so that he can easily find the store again. Even still, Mary doesn't really believe it, because why would she? But then she sees a fly face through the wall, and that's what convinces her to try it as well. Mary enters the Backrooms and makes her way through these locations we've seen before. She eventually finds this corner with these kind of crazed writings on the wall. Things like, the architecture makes no sense, or tables aren't supposed to bleed when you stab them.
Yes, and in the center of it, there's this almost giant humanoid-looking drawing, and it's holding what looks more like a normal-sized human and almost biting into it. So we get kind of our first glimpse as to what might be the creature haunting this place that we've up until now only heard the footsteps of.
It's at this point where Clark reappears, and he assures her that it's just him and there's nothing to worry about, but she is rightfully a little apprehensive about that. Clark manages to make his way to her, and then he puts her in a headlock and chokes her out while insisting that this is for her own good.
When she wakes again, she finds herself tied to a chair with Clark sitting across the table from her in what we learn is the Backrooms recreation of Clark's kitchen area. Also in the room with Clark and Mary are these humanoid-like things that, as far as Clark understands, the Backrooms also creates. They look like presumably humans in the real world, except off. They have multiple eyes or are fused into the chairs that they're in. One of them even comes with a lamp as part of his body.
Clark is talking at Mary while he has a captive audience and explains his theory about the Backrooms.
Essentially, he feels that this place is endlessly generating recreations of real-life rooms and areas and apparently people. And he says that the more it remembers something, the less it does, which essentially is his understanding of why all of these rooms look like places we find in real life every day, just off.
He says that somewhere on the world there's probably someone who looks a little like this, and the Backrooms just got it a little wrong. Here's where he reveals that they don't bleed, so he stabs one of them in the neck. And then he reveals that you can eat them, and he tears off a few chunks of this guy's belly and presents it to Mary to eat, which she, of course, doesn't.
Yes, thankfully they don't put her or the audience through that.
Speak for yourself. Clark wants Mary to admit that he was right and she was wrong, and he insists while she's tied up that they do the roleplay exercise again, recreating the night that his wife left him.
Early on in the movie, we see a photo of Clark's wife, and it's clear that one of these still-life humanoid recreations in the Backrooms is meant to look like her. So when Clark says he wants Mary to tell him that she was wrong about him and that he was right, really what he wants is to hear that from his wife. So he actually scalps the one that looks like his wife and makes Mary wear her hair as kind of a wig while they have this roleplay session.
They go through some familiar exchanges that we heard earlier in the therapy session, where Clark makes it very clear that he's paying for his wife's lifestyle, for their home, so he should be allowed to do whatever he wants, drink as much as he wants. The difference is, this time, Mary is less sympathetic to him and really just says it like it is. Specifically, she says, "You know why your wife left you? It's not because of the money. It's not because you're an alcoholic. It's not even because you're an asshole. It's because of the whining."
Yeah, so Mary takes the opposite approach of what you might expect and refuses to give in to Clark's demands, just telling him that nothing is ever your fault, is it? You get kicked out of your house, you blame your wife. Your store is failing, you blame the world. And one line that got a laugh from a lot of the crowd was, "You tie me up, you blame your brain. You are your brain, dipshit."
Mary tells him what a lot of people wish their therapists would, which is, "You don't have to change. If you like it in the Backrooms, you can stay. Just let me out." And so he agrees. As he's untying her, we get the reveal of a large copy of Clark.
The mascot for Clark's store is Clark dressed up as a pirate. He also films a commercial dressed up like this earlier in the movie. So, our creature reveal is a version of Clark dressed up as this pirate, peg leg and all, except it's maybe 3 times the size of a normal human and almost looks claymation in the face. It definitely isn't, but that's kind of the uncanny valley look that it's giving. And I think it's an incredible reveal. It's a very scary creature.
Along the lines of the Backrooms channeling the uncanny valley, this is this kind of combination between a man's face and a mascot, because clearly the Backrooms doesn't quite get the difference.
We see that Clark has some kind of relationship with this creature. He talks to it in a way that makes it clear he's talked to it before. And we know that it was behind him in that earlier scene with Kat and clearly killed and ate her and Bobby, but did not kill Clark. So Clark goes to embrace it and says that it's okay. The creature doesn't have to kill Mary. She said they don't have to change. They can just stay here together forever.
And the pirate creature lifts Clark up, brings Clark in close, and then bites a chunk out of his neck. And the still life may not bleed, but Clark sure does.
But thankfully, while the creature is distracted with Clark, Mary is able to finish untying herself and start running away.
Mary sprains her ankle, which slows her down, but she continues running from the creature, going through all kinds of weird rooms, including some that resemble some of the places she's lived in her life. She makes it to a recreation of Clark's store, and for a second thinks it's the real deal, but of course she can't make it through the front door.
We get an incredibly effective wide shot here, where as the creature is chasing her, it also makes its way into this recreation of Clark's store. And Mary turns around and we get the whole furniture store with, in the back at this point, looking much smaller than it really is, this giant, terrifying creature. And it just becomes bigger and bigger as it makes its way towards her. And it looks like it's moving so slowly, but because it's so big, it really gets really close to her quite fast. And I do think every chase scene with this creature is so scary.
Mary manages to snap the creature's legs using an improvised weapon, but while she's doing it, she accidentally triggers a trap and smoke starts filling the store. She finds a little crack in the corner and starts inching her way through it. The creature is too large to fit in. It's trying to reach in and grab her, but it just can't get through. And at this point, a bit of a calm starts to wash over her as she realizes that she's free of the creature now. However, on the other side of this passage, there are men in hazmat suits who start gassing her as she exits until she passes out.
So once she wakes up, this is where we really get to spend a lot of time with Mark Duplass's character. He is a scientist that works for Async, which is a company that has discovered and is now researching these backrooms. It's made clear very quickly through kind of the vibes that we're feeling that Mary is now a prisoner of this company, but Mark Duplass's character asks her some things like how she found the backrooms, the location in which they were in, is it Clark that she was looking for, and just any information she can give him.
Once Mary realizes she might not be making it out of this, she just shares Clark's perspective of the Backrooms, which is like explaining what a dog looks like to someone who's never seen a dog. And she's a little less forthcoming than she might have been if she thought that she would get out of this. The camera leaves Mary and Mark Duplass and travels into the Backrooms, where we see many different variations of Mary's childhood home, and in each variation it's just more and more off until finally we get to the very bottom and see that the Backrooms has created a version of Mary that is a little deformed and kind of blending with the furniture, and that's where the movie just ends.
This is a very glass half empty kind of ending. Well, I don't think this is actually Mary, because there's no indication, as far as I can tell, that the Backrooms transforms the people that might be trapped inside of it. This is a still life recreation of her, and the implication does seem to be either that she was killed following her interrogation by Async, or at least that she didn't make it out of there and is not living the life that she once knew.
I personally found this ending pretty unsatisfying. I even turned to you and said, is that it? Where's the rest? I do appreciate that the movie doesn't go too deep into the backstory of the Backrooms, doesn't feel the need to explain everything in this one movie, because, let's be honest, there's probably going to be a sequel. But I do wish there was just a little more to the third act of this movie. It felt pretty sudden to me.
I agree. We do know that there will be a sequel. Kane Parsons confirmed that he has something in the works, both movie-wise and in terms of continuing his YouTube series. But I agree that it just felt like the ending needed something more. But also, I felt like certain things were kind of overexplored. I do understand why we got backstory with Dr. Mary, and I do agree that it was needed in some way, especially because she essentially becomes our protagonist by Act 3. But I think a lot of us are here both because Kane Parsons has already proven himself to be quite talented even before being given the opportunity to do this feature film, but really just because the concept of the Backrooms are so scary. And I appreciate that they don't reveal the creature until the very end, because I've been very open about how effective I found it. I do think it's incredibly scary. At its core, the horror of the Backrooms is very simple. The idea of being stuck in this liminal space, this sensory overload of bright lights and humbuzz all the time with creatures that are out to get you, that's scary enough in itself. And I think the movie could have capitalized on that more, even though we do spend a lot of time in the Backrooms.
Yes, I do think this movie would have benefited from having a simpler story and just really digging into the creepy scenes in the Backrooms. I think with a horror movie of this nature, you don't really need to have the most fleshed out characters to still make it effective. You just need to have enough of a character there for us to follow them as they're going through this horror. I think of something like The Descent. We barely know those people, but the movie still works as they're going deeper and deeper into the cave. I think with this movie, you have a lot of it which is pretty effectively constructed as a horror movie diving into the Backrooms. But then you also have a movie that's trying to do a little more and reveal a little more about this world, try to have a little bit of a theme around Dr. Mary, and I think that's where it sort of fails, because it doesn't nearly achieve that ambition in the same way it could have if it just focused on the Backrooms.
That's how I felt as well, although that is not to say that Kane Parsons didn't do a great job here. I think there is so much talent behind the camera. Like we've said, there are scenes that are incredibly tense, and this movie looks great the whole time. The set design is incredible, which of course wasn't entirely Kane Parsons, but was born from his vision. Despite not being as high on this as I was on something like Obsession, I am still excited to see what he continues to do both in this franchise and beyond, because there's a lot of talent behind the camera here.
Yes, on a craft level, every element of this movie is executed very well. My issues were mainly just with the screenplay. It's funny watching this back-to-back with Psycho, because Psycho infamously has this ending where a psychiatrist explains the movie you just watched. Now, in 1960, you had audiences who may not be familiar with some of these concepts, like Norman dressing up as his mother, split personalities. I think in 2026, audiences are maybe a little more in tune, maybe could have figured out what the Backrooms was. We certainly had enough time in it to get it, but still they have Mark Duplass show up to just explain it one more time, just in case we didn't get it. I felt like the characters weren't quite as fleshed out as they could have been. With Clark, I feel like his character is about as fleshed out as we need him to be in a horror movie. But the second half of the movie asks us to accept Mary as the protagonist, and I really didn't think her character was developed very well. We get these flashbacks to her childhood. We learn that her mother was probably schizophrenic, that she kind of locked them into the house and neglected Mary a bit, and we're meant to understand that this informs Mary as an adult. We see that Mary's childhood home was demolished, and she kept this cutout of the cement where she put her handprint as a child. Then in the third act, she uses that same block of cement to smash against the Clark pirate creature, which in theory should be a satisfying way of her leaving behind her trauma to survive, but it's really not earned in any way, in my opinion. Plus, the movie never really explains why a woman born and raised in California has a Norwegian accent.
We did have the pleasure of seeing this in a packed theater, and it is always exciting to have films come out that get people hyped to go to the movies. So from that perspective, I'd still definitely highly recommend seeing this. And I think despite disappointments with some of the character elements, there's still a lot of fun to be had here, especially if you like horror movies.
Yes, I got a similar vibe to Five Nights at Freddy's from the audience, because there are clearly a lot of people who are familiar with the Backrooms. Some people are even familiar with the lore from the shorts, and they're going to the movie with that expectation. I personally am not familiar with the lore, but I saw people in the audience pointing at the screen at certain scenes. There were clearly some Easter eggs that appealed to them. I think this movie will definitely be successful. We know we're getting a sequel, so I'm curious to see what Kane Parsons can do in the future and how he can flesh out this story. I think as a director, he has proven himself. I just hope that the next movie is a little tighter in the screenplay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in and talking movies with us. Make sure you check out our most recent episode on I Love Boosters and Is God Is, two movies you absolutely need to check out before they leave theaters.
Yes, definitely check those out before Backrooms. I promise Backrooms will be in theaters for a while.
Yes, it's so exciting to be in a time when we have such a variety of original, exciting options. So please go see all of those and more if you can.
And be sure to follow Cinephomaniacs on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever it is you get podcasts.
For updates on new episodes and other fun content, you can follow us on Instagram, Letterboxd, and Twitter at Cinephomaniacs.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Cinephomaniacs. We can't wait to see you again next week.
Bye.
Did you nut? Usually you nut.